This is a short screencast demonstrating how to answer evaluation style questions. You should always include the pros, cons, or advantages and disadvantages in these questions and include a conclusion based on the data that you are provided with. These types of questions will contain most of the information you need to answer them. To gain full marks, you need to have good spelling, grammar, and punctuation, as well as using scientific terms correctly. To answer this question, you could use subheadings in your answer. For example, pros, cons, and conclusion. This question carries 6 marks. So the marks will be divided equally between the pros, the cons, and the conclusion. So to gain full marks, you should expect to give 2 pros or advantages of the study, 2 disadvantages, and justify your conclusion. Let's now go on and look at the advantages of this experiment. The advantages to this study are that teenage rats were used, which were said to be the equivalent to human teenagers. The THC dose, or active chemical, given was typically that used by people who smoke cannabis. A control group was included, and later on in the experiment, the rats were able to self-administer the amount of heroin they wanted themselves. So let's recap over those advantages. The advantages are 1, that teenage rats were used, similar to human teenagers. 2, a similar dosage of cannabis was used. 3, there was a control group included in the experiment. And 4, later on, the rats were allowed to self-administer heroin themselves. Now let's go and have a look at the disadvantages of this study. The disadvantages. When we look at this study, we see that there were only 6 rats used in the experimental group and 6 in the control group, given a total number of 12 altogether. And also that how the rats administered heroin differed from that to how people will use it. So again, let's recap our disadvantages of this study. The 2 disadvantages were only 12 rats were used in this study, and the administration of heroin differs between rats and people. Now let's have a look at our conclusion. The scientists concluded that the rats who'd been given THC as teenagers stabilised their heroin intake at higher levels than other rats, and that this may possibly be evidence of a link between THC or cannabis use and later heroin addiction. However, rat behavioural physiology, that's how their body systems work, is not the same as that of humans. So it does not prove a direct link between human cannabis use and later heroin addiction. Your conclusion should include that rats given more THC took more heroin later on in the experiment, and that this may be possible evidence of a link between cannabis use and heroin addiction. However, rat and human physiology and behaviour do differ, and there is no evidence from this study of a direct link between human cannabis use and later heroin addiction. Evaluation style questions follow the same kind of format each time. You will be expected to give a balanced argument for and against the study, looking at the advantages and disadvantages and drawing a conclusion from the evidence that you are presented with. Most of the information you need will actually be in the question information.